on X, Twitter. I have about 2 million total over all of my social media platforms. And my stuff travels and I make tons of money on my own. Not to like, I'm not bragging, but it's weird that like networks don't pay attention to someone like me. And there are other people out there. There are a lot of independent journalists out there that are realizing the same thing and they're doing it on their own. And one of them is a good friend of mine, Shell Kramer. She runs the Shell Shocked, I would call it a podcast, but it's also Spaces on X. Shell, what's going on, man?
Hey, good morning, Tim. It's great to join you this morning.
Yeah, hey, no problem. So, like, look, I want you to talk about, again, doing it on your own is the way to go. And I've realized this. It took enough bonks to the head. And I've worked for many, many major media organizations, but going out and doing my own podcast, working on your own, it actually pays off, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, Tim. The public is hungry for the truth, and we're not getting it anywhere else but independent journalism. And I think that if you want to get out there and hear something outside of the box, you've got to turn to the independent journalists that are rising up on all social media platforms today. It's the only place you're going to get it, sir.
It's the only place with nuanced ideas. I drop in on your spaces a bunch now. I used to not, but I have more time on my hands and I haven't been drinking, so I got to do something. Um, but when I listen to, and occasionally I listen to a bunch of these other pundits that have been around for a while, or when I tune into Fox and listen to all these people, it's the same talking points over and over and over again. And I'm on, sometimes I'm on campaign calls and things like that. And literally the talking points go out and that's all these people have are the exact same talking points to say over and over. And when you tune into something like your show, Shell Shock, spelled Chelle, on Twitter, you hear actual different nuanced opinions. Crazy concept, isn't it?
It is crazy. But we have a good time doing it, Tim. We bring up a lot of independent journalists, speakers, former, MSM personalities that get in there and they're doing their own Substacks now. They're speaking freely on Spaces without the constraint or, rule of law of mainstream media and giving us a lot of new information and things that we never dreamed of hearing in the news because they won't report on it. And so these independent journalists come on up into our Shell Shocked and Pirate Radio show, and they are free to just let us know everything, and it frees your mind. It's just an amazing tool that we have to use these spaces as a podcast and get the entire public informed. And it's awesome. I couldn't have dreamed of anything better than this, to be honest with you.
Well, it's interesting. So I was in one of your spaces, and the late George Santos. I'm going to call him the late George Santos because he's going to spend some time in jail here. But George Santos comes in, and he and I start talking about dieting and stuff. I mean, this guy, like, I actually thought it was fake when he first jumped in. But you get members of Congress regularly jumping in. Again, I think even members of Congress, smart members of Congress, realize that the place to be is independent journalism and on spaces where you can have conversations with normal humans. And and I'm not saying like when I say this, I'm not saying this negatively, but Lil Ol Shell has grown to where like I don't know how many people regularly listen to your stuff. I'm saying probably 10,000 a week or more, probably a lot more, see and hear your spaces. And you get members of Congress dropping in. Sometimes it's even hard to book them on radio.
Yeah, sometimes lightning does strike. We've had 6 members of Congress sitting on our mics all together. They even broke news in our space the night that Jim Jordan was contemplating going to the floor of the House the following morning. We had 6 members of Congress in there, including Mike Johnson, and they broke the news that he was going to be stepping out of the race for Speaker. And one of the independent journalists that were in the space just grabbed a hold of that and made it there that morning after Jordan came off of the floor of the House and got the first interview with Jim Jordan after he stepped out of the race. So, they can come in and they can kind of, give us hints about what's going on. And I think the best part about having the opportunity to have these guys come in and get on your mics is regular people do get to talk to them, their constituents or, their countrymen, and they get to feel the pulse of the nation. And I think that's what's so wonderful about it, because you don't get that when you're standing off, with some reporter and, they're driving the narrative with you with their questioning. We get to get up there and ask real questions, and get the real answers from, our representatives. And it's fantastic. So, yeah, they like to come in. They like to come in and feel the pulse of the nation. Sometimes they'll even, kick off some fun with us, and they get to be real, and they trust us, which is just mind-blowing to me, because they trust that they can come in and have a great conversation, and we can keep it tight, and drive that conversation with them. It's wonderful. Us regular, normie little people, sitting on a stage with our representatives. It's amazing.
I'm going to disagree with you on one point that you said, and it was keeping it tight, because I don't think you do keep it tight, and I think that's what makes it original, is because these folks go into these rooms, and they are, even sometimes, and God bless Anthony and Edwin, the producers here, they don't take questions. They might send over a talking point, hey, we want to talk about XYZ, but I've seen many times where members of Congress, especially super dumb ones, their comms directors, try to give you questions ahead of time. And when you show up to a space, it's all over the place, and you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to be asked.
That's true. That is true. But we do try to vet some of the callers that, pop up on our stage to, speak with our representatives when they are in the space. And, you can't let them drop a grenade in the middle of a room. You know what I'm saying? Because when you're having a really good conversation with your representatives like that, you don't want the conversation lost. And once it loses its value and it's lost, and the conversation kind of goes sideways, we just don't like that to happen. We like it when they're in there and they can just kind of flow with the conversation and be original and be real and be themselves without being, confronted or having something that, just blows everybody up and gets it heated. We kind of like them to stay, at a medium where we can, get through a really good conversation and keep them in there, because if something does happen, they're like, okay, we're out of here. And we don't want to lose that, in our space or our conversation.
And speaking to people who have been adjusting with these spaces and realizing how valuable X is, I co-hosted one of the pre-show, pre-DNC spaces with Mario Knopfel, who has really kind of mastered cashing in on Twitter and X now. One night was Glenn Beck, the next night was me. And, so Glenn Beck is even realizing, like, hey, even though he's got this big network built around him, your Spaces is better off than that. But when I hosted, one crazy thing that happened, I think it was like 10 or 20,000 people were listening at the time. Mike Lee drops in and Nancy Mace drop in. I'm not a big fan of Nancy Mace. I let that be known. But I had a 30-minute impromptu interview with Mike Lee. And anything can happen on these spaces. And it's a very, again, open forum, open conversation. Great conversations come out of it. Unique conversations come out of it. Not stuff that you see in traditional media at all. And I keep beating, like, you see a little bit of different stuff here at Sirius, but that network I almost signed with, well, it wasn't about to sign with anytime soon, but the network that offered me a deal, their stuff is the same boring stuff over and over again. And it's not a nuanced conversation. It's the same 90-year-olds that smell like mothballs that they, creak out in the morning and eat their oatmeal. They don't put raisins in it anymore because it's too hard to chew. But they come and they say the same talking points, the same things they've been saying for the past 50 years. And it's just so different. And then you get perspectives from real human beings like you, Shell, and you're shell shocked again on Spaces, CHELLE and Hot Tamale 02 or whatever. You have it's so hard to find you on Twitter. I'll be very honest with you, but once you find you, it's worth going to. But, you just bring a totally different perspective, again, because you've been in the real world and not in political realms and not in these circles and not in the stupid bubble for years now. And I really appreciate it. I think a lot of people appreciate it.
Well, thanks, Tim. Yeah, it makes no sense to keep beating a dead horse every time, you get in front of your audience. So that's why we love all of the different guests that we have that come in and start telling us, their perspectives and their, points of views, and getting us out of the box. I don't know why mainstream media thinks beating a dead horse is a winner, especially with last night's interview. That was amazing. Anyway, so, we streamed it live so we could all give our points and opinions, throughout her interview, the whole 18 minutes of it. And it was just amazing to hear everybody take each talking point she had and just dismantle it in real time in these spaces. And having the opportunity to do that with great people on stage is amazing. And you're right, it is a great tool. It's a utility everyone needs to be using, especially if they want to be a citizen journalist and they're on the ground and they've got some great video or they've got some great insight on something that, from a city, council meeting or whatever for their local people. Use these spaces because you can't beat it. You just really can't. You get in there and everybody hears the truth. And that's all we want. And we bring the receipts. And that's very important. Bring the receipts. Because if you don't have receipts, you're just not going to stay on my stage. You see what I'm saying? So we know when somebody's trying to flub us. We can, segue away from that and get back to the truth and, just continue a great conversation every single time we launch one of those. It's
all right. We got to hold on.
I'm so glad you've been joining.
I got a hard cut you because we got a commercial coming up real quick. Tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on X at HotTamale02 and on YouTube at Shellshock TM.
And Shellshock, CHELLE is how you spell it, Shellshocked. Shel Kramer, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Tim.
You're listening